After leaving the parking lot of her educational institution, Jodi headed home but never appeared there. Her anxious relatives immediately sought help from the police, who started the search without delay. During the investigation, detectives uncovered several very troubling details about her disappearance, but even they could not anticipate the horrors that would later be revealed. When the truth about her fate finally came to light, it was so shocking that it led to changes in legislation, as no one could have foreseen such an outcome. Jodi Sanderholm was born on September 26, 1987, in the small American town of Arkansas City, Kansas, into a large and harmonious family with a brother and an older sister. During her school years, Jodi achieved significant success. She was the captain of the dance team for several years, received 2 scholarships, won first place in a physical competition, and was honored as Student of the Year. After school, she continued her education in college, majoring in pharmacy, and also joined the dance team. Since the college was in her hometown, Jodi continued to live with her family. In January 2007, at the age of 19, she was actively preparing for an important performance with the dance team, requiring intense training. On the morning of January 5th, she arrived at college for another training session, which ended around 10:45. After the training, Jodi planned to return home. On her way to the parking lot, she arranged to meet a friend in a few hours, said goodbye to her, got into her car, and left. However, her friend Lori was faced with an unpleasant discovery. Approaching her car, she found that one of the tires was completely flat, which seemed odd to her since everything had been fine with the tire just a few hours ago when she arrived for training. Lori thought that maybe she had accidentally driven over something sharp that caused the tire to puncture. As she pondered how to get home now, a passing man noticed her and offered his help in changing the tire. He noted that the tire damage looked unusual, as if someone had deliberately cut it with a knife, and clarified that if it had been run over by a sharp object of such size, the tire would have deflated immediately. These words alarmed Lori, and she decided to contact Jodi to share her concerns. But her attempts to call were unsuccessful. The phone consistently went to voicemail. Lori assumed that Jodi might be busy after training, possibly taking a shower or having lunch, so she decided to call back later. However, even several hours later, attempts to contact Jodi again proved fruitless. For Lori, this seemed strange for several reasons. First, the journey from college to Jodi's home took only a few minutes, and Jodi should have finished all her errands by then. Second, they had arranged to meet, and Jodi never disappeared without explanation. Eventually, concerned, Lori decided to go to her friend's house to make sure everything was all right. At the spot where Jodi's car was supposed to be parked, it was missing, which only fueled Lori's alarm. The absence of the car hinted that Jodi had gone somewhere. Lori speculated that her friend might have stopped by the store owned by her family, as Jodi's mother spent a lot of time there, and Jodi herself liked to visit her there. Upon arriving at the location, Lori found only Jodi's mother, who was surprised to learn that her daughter had not appeared and had not answered calls for several hours. The mother confirmed that she too had tried to contact her daughter, to no avail. This seemed strange, as Jodi was always in touch with her mother, regardless of her schedule, and always shared her plans for the day. Concern grew when the mother decided to seek help from the elder daughter living in another city. Considering that the elder sister was in her last month of pregnancy and was about to give birth, the mother believed that Jodi would definitely respond to a call from her. However, even this call went unanswered, heightening the mother's alarm and causing her to consider the possible misfortunes that could have befallen her daughter. At this moment, Lori not only remembered her damaged tire, but also another recent incident that began to worry her even more. It all happened on the evening of January 1st, as she was returning home after a dance rehearsal. Leaving the college parking lot, Lori noticed a light Cadillac about to turn in front of her, but suddenly stopped, letting her pass. This seemed strange to her. Soon she noticed that the same car was following her closely, raising her suspicion that maybe the driver had intentionally let her pass to start following her. To test her suspicions, Lori began to make unexpected turns onto neighboring streets, all the while keeping an eye on the rearview mirror. To her surprise, the stranger in the Cadillac continued to stay behind her, only increasing her fear. In search of safety, Lori decided to drive straight to the nearest police station. Arriving at its parking lot, she began to observe the actions of the driver of the light Cadillac. He followed her all the way to the station, but, not entering the parking lot, drove past and disappeared from view. After spending some time in the parking lot of the station, pondering whether to report the incident to the police, Lori eventually decided that she might be exaggerating the danger. After all, she had not remembered the car's license plate or the driver's face, so in her opinion, she did not have enough grounds for a police report. Deciding that it could all be a simple coincidence, Lori drove home. This incident quickly faded from her memory, and she almost forgot about it until the morning of January 5th. Arriving for training at the college, Lori was about to get out of her car when she noticed the familiar Cadillac slowly driving past. This time, she managed to get a good look at the driver's face, who gave her a piercing look. It was a 20-year-old young man named Justin, who had been familiar to Lori for many years since he was in the same class as her older brother. Lori always felt a dislike for Justin, especially after an incident when her brother brought him and other friends home. That time, Justin silently observed Lori for a long time, not taking his eyes off her, causing her so much fear and discomfort that she had to ask her brother to kick him out, as she felt unsafe in his presence. This sudden visit by Justin to the college parking lot made Lori wonder if he was connected to her tire being punctured, especially since he had been spotted there that morning. Moreover, Lori remembered that Jodi was also nearby and saw Justin driving past them at a slow speed. Later, on the way to practice, Lori shared this observation with Jodi, but by that time she no longer felt as anxious. Despite his odd behavior in the past, Lori had known Justin for many years and quickly dismissed her fears, deciding that what had happened was merely a coincidence. Lori shared all the details with Jodi's mother, after which the latter's alarm only intensified. The woman went home and discovered that her daughter had not returned. She noticed that Jodi usually came home after her classes to take a shower, but this time the bathroom remained dry. Also, Jodi always brought home the mail and newspapers from the box, leaving them in the hallway. But this time, that hadn't happened. By the evening around 6 p.m., the parents' concern had turned into real alarm, and they decided to call the police. Despite Jodi being only 19 years old and only a few hours having passed since her disappearance, the police took the matter seriously. The local sheriff, well acquainted with the family, understood from their words that the situation was serious and that something untoward might indeed have happened to the girl. The parents also mentioned her boyfriend Colby, with whom Jodi had been in a relationship for 5 years. He lived in the same town, but lately he often traveled to Texas to visit his brother. The police reasoned that perhaps Jodi might have gone to him, which would explain her absence. However, after talking to Colby, who claimed he hadn't seen Jodi since he left for Texas, it became clear that the situation was different. This prompted the police to immediately begin a search operation around the town and its surroundings. The possibility that Jodi had been involved in a car accident on one of the lesser-used roads, which were plentiful in the county of their small town, was considered. However, this scenario raised questions, considering that Jodi's route from college to home went through the town's central streets. During the search, the police also took into account Lori's story about Justin's suspicious behavior, deciding to have a talk with him. They visited his house, and the young man shared that he had spent most of the day at a lake with friends, located 25 kilometers from the town, a place popular among locals for relaxation and fishing. Justin claimed that they had stayed there all day, and at one point their car got stuck in the mud. Attempts to pull the car out were unsuccessful, leading to an argument among friends. Eventually, Justin walked away from the group, went out to the road, and called his father to ask for a pickup. His father, who was present at home during the police visit, confirmed this story, adding that he indeed picked up his son from the lake. After talking to Justin, the police continued to survey the area. Throughout the night, patrol officers scanned the area, hoping to find any trace of Jodi or her car, but their search was unsuccessful. With dawn, the police sought support from the community of volunteers, as news of the girl's disappearance spread rapidly among the residents, drawing attention and a desire to help from many. That same day, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation offered its cooperation to the local police chief, who, despite a usual aversion to external interference, accepted the offered assistance. Investigators quickly got to work, re-interviewing Jodi's boyfriend upon his return and confirming his non-involvement in the disappearance based on his bank card usage and witness statements indicating his presence in another state. The search operation expanded by the hour, attracting more volunteers ready to join the search at the police station. Search teams methodically checked all places where Jodi's car could be. Meanwhile, investigators' attention increasingly focused on Justin, as he remained the only one who aroused their suspicions. For a more thorough investigation, they began surveillance of his home and a detailed check of his alibi. The previous day, investigators had called in 3 of Justin's friends to the station to confirm his alibi. However, the police were met with an unexpected turn. Each friend denied seeing Justin on the day of Jodi's disappearance, let alone visiting the lake together. This revelation prompted detectives to immediately consider Justin as the primary suspect in the disappearance. Nevertheless, additional evidence was required for an arrest, and investigators intensified their efforts to find clues. Further investigation revealed that Justin had recently ended a relationship with a girl named Alexis, and the detectives decided to meet with her. To their surprise, Alexis not only agreed to the meeting, but also suggested they meet in the big park located near the town. She shared that Justin was almost obsessed with this place, where many residents sought solitude in nature. However, he visited it much more frequently than usual, sometimes expressing himself very strangely. She recalled one of their joint visits during which, standing on the riverbank, Justin stated that if he ever killed someone and dumped the body there, it would never be found. Alexis emphasized that his words did not sound like a joke, but rather as an expression of a real intention to commit something terrible. In the context of Jodi's disappearance, Alexis's story seemed particularly troubling to the investigators. She mentioned Justin's cruelty, especially noting his behavior during moments of intimacy when he had a habit of strangling her. These details only intensified the suspicions towards him, resulting in search teams being directed to the specified park. Concurrently, an analysis of security camera footage from the college showed that Justin regularly visited the campus, even though he was not a student. The footage captured him watching members of the dance team, including the morning of Jodi's disappearance, when he was also recorded by the cameras. Unfortunately, the video did not cover the section of the parking lot where Lori's car was parked, thus not allowing to confirm whether he was involved in damaging her tire. However, the footage showed Justin exiting his car and heading in the direction where Lori's transport was located before returning back. This occurred while Lori was at practice. All the gathered facts intensified the suspicions of his possible involvement in Jodi's disappearance, although direct evidence was still lacking. Nevertheless, they found a way to arrest the young man on other charges. It turned out that just a few days before, Justin had been arrested for illegal trespassing. The judge had released him on bail, but detectives contacted this judge and informed him about the ongoing investigation. As a result, the judge revoked the bail and Justin was detained. This allowed the police to search his home in hopes of finding new clues, as well as to reinterrogate his father. The man insisted that he had told the truth and had indeed picked up his son near the lake before bringing him home. The father clarified that Justin was covered in mud and immediately took a shower upon arriving home, then began cleaning his boots. The police seized the boots and took photos of the soles, hoping it would aid in the investigation. Additionally, they confiscated Justin's phone and car, but this did not yield any new leads. At dawn the next day, the investigative team was informed about a location according to cell network data provided by Jodi's mobile service provider. This information caught their attention because on the day of the young woman's disappearance, her cell phone pointed towards a specific park, a frequent destination for Justin. This fact prompted the police to conduct an intensified examination of that area. That same day, one of the search teams discovered on the ground a pair of tracks, one belonging to large boots, likely a man's size, and the other to smaller flip-flops, suggesting women's footwear. It's important to note that Jodi was wearing flip-flops on the day she went missing. A few dozen meters from where the tracks were found, the flip-flop tracks suddenly stopped, and only the men's shoe prints continued. This led the investigators to a grim conclusion. Possibly, someone had forced or threatened the young woman into the woods, and at a certain point, she began to resist. It is assumed that after this, the man might have attacked her, and leaving her unconscious, continued to carry her further. However, the tracks did not lead to the discovery of any new evidence, and with the onset of darkness, the search was reluctantly suspended. Some members of the search team decided to drive past the lake where Justin reportedly spent time with friends on the day of the disappearance. This route was on their way, and they hoped to use the opportunity to survey the area for clues. Arriving at the local parking lot near the lake, they quickly noticed something unusual on the asphalt next to the path leading to the public restrooms: sharp tire tracks, as if someone had lost control. Exploring the surroundings, the volunteers found shoe prints on the ground near the restrooms. One of the searchers decided to check inside the restrooms, which were no more than pit latrines, and using a flashlight found items resembling letters and other papers in one of them. In another restroom, he was drawn to a bright women's jacket, a purse, and a single woman's flip-flop. Immediately contacting the police, they retrieved the items, which were quickly identified as belonging to Jodi. Her personal documents were found in the purse. Furthermore, other items that could belong to the young woman were discovered in the restrooms, including dance shoes, shorts, pants, as well as a car mat and a seat cover. Although Jodi had not yet been found, the discovery of her personal items was a disturbing sign for the investigative team, reinforcing the belief that the chances of finding her alive were minimal. The focus of the detectives now shifted to searching for her body. For Jodi's loved ones, the news about the found items turned into a deep shock. All this time, the family had been living in hope that she would be found alive, but the recent developments had almost destroyed all hope. Jodi's older sister had given birth to a child exactly the day after the disappearance and received this information while in the hospital with the newborn in her arms. She shared that at those moments, her mind could not fully grasp that the most terrible and joyful events in her life were happening simultaneously. The day after Jodi's belongings were discovered, the police redirected the search team's efforts towards the lake and its vicinity, considering that personal items had been found there. Considering the possibility that Jodi's body could be nearby, the detectives noted the tire tracks leading into the water, which could indicate that the young woman's car was dumped into the lake. Divers were brought in to spend the day diving to the bottom in hopes of finding the car, but to no avail. The lake turned out to be quite extensive, and even a small portion of it required significant time for a thorough examination. At this point, the investigative team sought assistance from a Texas-based nonprofit organization specialized in underwater searches. Over the years, this organization had provided invaluable help in solving many cases, finding evidence in hundreds of instances. Founded in memory of the creator's abducted and murdered daughter, it initially was a small group of volunteers supporting the police in searches for the missing. Over time, it transformed into a large professional structure with advanced technical equipment not always available to police stations, including boats with radar, helicopters, and drones with various sensors. Joining the search operation the next morning, they began scanning the lake's water with radar technology on a boat. Very soon, the equipment detected an object on the bottom resembling the size of a car. Divers were immediately directed to the specified location, where they confirmed the discovery of a vehicle. After pulling the car ashore, inspectors easily determined it belonged to Jodi. However, to their surprise, Jodi was not found inside the vehicle. This led the investigators to reconsider the assumption that the body might be inside. The investigators realized that searching for evidence inside the vehicle was unlikely to yield any results, as all the windows were open, and after several days underwater, the interior was completely flooded, which could have destroyed any DNA or other important traces. However, despite this, specialists thoroughly inspected the interior, and to their surprise, the search proved fruitful. They found a single hair, which was immediately sent for laboratory analysis. While detectives awaited the DNA analysis results, search groups continued to explore the park area near the town. One of the volunteers discovered a suspicious pile of branches in the forest, appearing to be artificially created. Approaching, he saw a human hand sticking out from under the branches and immediately reported to the police. The investigators instantly realized they had found Jodi and sent her body for forensic examination. The results showed that the cause of death was asphyxiation following a severe blow to the head. It was noted that considering the nature of the injuries, the attacker might have stopped the asphyxiation several times before it became fatal. Furthermore, Numerous bruises were found on the victim's body, indicating a series of blows. Experts also concluded that the victim had been sexually assaulted, with traces of foreign DNA found on her body. These samples were too insubstantial for detailed analysis. However, when examining samples from under Jodi's fingernails, skin particles were discovered. DNA extracted from them matched Justin's DNA, confirming a match. As for the hair found in the victim's car, analysis showed that it belonged to Justin. These pieces of evidence gave investigators grounds to charge Justin with murder. He, in turn, denied any involvement in the crime. Nonetheless, based on the collected direct and circumstantial evidence, detectives formed a convincing version of events. The discovery of the body also led to additional evidence that furthered the investigation. The investigative team needed to determine the circumstances under which Justin managed to abduct Jodi. That fateful morning, as she left the college parking lot, detectives were convinced that the young woman had made it home. Proof of this was the envelopes found in the restroom, delivered to her mailbox that same morning. One of the envelopes bore Jodi's fingerprints, indicating that she had retrieved them from the box after returning home from her classes. Therefore, Justin must have carried out the abduction in the time between her arrival at home and entering the house. Confirming this theory, the police found men's shoe prints on the vacant lot opposite Jodi's house, the tread pattern matching Justin's footwear. This led investigators to speculate that Justin might have been waiting for her, and when Jodi approached the mailbox, he attacked her with a heavy object and then placed her in her own car. Alternatively, Justin could have threatened Jodi, forcing her into the car. Then he presumably drove her to the park where detectives found new evidence. Jodi's friend reported seeing her car that day, with a boy at the wheel who appeared much larger than her boyfriend Colby. Driving by, the friend waved, expecting a response from Jodi, but there was none, and attempts to contact her by phone were unsuccessful. It was noted that the car was headed towards the mentioned park, which was corroborated by other witnesses who saw Justin and Jodi together in the car near the park. Investigators surmised that Justin brought Jodi to a secluded area of the park and threatened her into following him into the forest. The shoe prints on the ground confirmed their movement deeper into the forest, but at a certain point, Jodi stopped following Justin, which provoked his aggression. After attacking her, he likely carried her further into the forest on his hands, where he committed violent acts, subsequently killing her and hiding the body under a layer of branches. According to forensic experts, the victim's torture and the act of murder took at least several hours. After Justin hid the body, he presumably used Jodi's car to reach the lake, where the car was later found in the water. His initial plan likely included walking home, but due to the significant distance, he soon decided to call his father for assistance. Detectives are confident in this sequence of events and have gathered enough evidence for the case to proceed to court. But further investigation revealed even more disturbing information about Justin that shocked the investigation and added clarity to the suspect's personality profile. Two women contacted the police expressing concern for their safety, Justin's ex-girlfriend and a co-worker from the cafe. Both shared their stories of fear regarding Justin. The ex-girlfriend reported that before his arrest, he had sent her threatening messages, after which she noticed him lurking around her house. The cafe employee shared a story about one morning when she was opening the establishment. Justin approached her asking for a ride, explaining that his car had supposedly broken down. Despite the fact that he had worked there for a short time, the woman was seriously wary of him. The reason for this was his strange behavior. She said she had to work and didn't have time, so Justin left. Soon she saw him drive past the cafe at a slow speed, watching her. There seemed to be nothing wrong with his car, and he drove past the establishment several more times that day. The woman was so frightened that she decided to call the police and ask them to escort her home. The next morning, when she arrived to open the cafe, the lock was riddled with wood chips, and she had no doubt that Justin had done it. But all of this was just the tip of the iceberg that the detective was to learn about after the arrest. Other women began to come forward and share their stories. One said that in 2000, when she was 14 and Justin was 17, he tried to abuse her by holding a pillow over her face. Another woman said that in 2001, she worked with Justin at KFS and they got to talking in the parking lot after her shift. The guy was sitting in his car and she was standing next to the driver's door. At one point, Justin suddenly grabbed her and dragged her into the cabin through the window, then forced her to sit with him for several hours. Another time he abused this girl, but she apparently did not report it to the police. That same year, he chased a girl who left a movie theater and headed home on foot. Justin followed her at a speed not exceeding 10 kilometers per hour until she entered her house. The girl immediately told her mother about it, and the mother managed to memorize the license plate number before contacting the police. However, this time there was no investigation. Another girl reported that in 2004, she found a note from Justin in her car, which scared her a lot. In 2006, he told an acquaintance who was looking for a car to buy that he had a suitable one and offered her a ride to see it. He had an 11-year-old girl with him at the time, and they both got into Justin's car. However, he drove them into the woods, and as soon as he stopped, they were able to escape, running for several kilometers until they reached a farmhouse. The girl called the police from there, but this time too, Justin was not charged with anything. In the same year, Justin took another girl to the woods where he forced her to undress at knife point. There were also other women who told similar stories. Some of them went to the police, but each time Justin avoided responsibility. However, the most shocking story was shared with detectives by a boy who was friends with Justin as a child. He was about 12 years old at the time, and he told his friend that he liked to sneak to a house nearby and peek at two girls who were swimming in the pool. In addition to this, he would also peek at them through their bedroom window. These girls were Jodi, who was about 9 years old at the time, and her older sister. The same friend told police that a few years later, when the older sister was 17, Justin would regularly pull into the parking lot in front of the movie theater where she worked the evening shift and watch her from the car for hours. All of this indicated that Justin had had unhealthy tendencies since childhood and had consistently committed crimes of varying severity throughout the years, but had never been held seriously accountable for them. The start of Justin's trial was postponed several times, and it did not begin until February 2009. Given the array of evidence and the number of witnesses who testified for the prosecution, the man had little chance of getting away with it. His attorneys, on the other hand, were unable to provide a single solid argument in favor of their client's innocence. Justin's trial was completed in the shortest possible time, in just 1 week, as a result of which the jury unequivocally found him guilty. The punishment was the death penalty, which could not be overturned on appeal. However, in 2018, Justin's lawyers managed to obtain a stay of execution, arguing that their client may have symptoms of mental retardation. Until now, Justin is still behind bars, and the final decision on his fate remains in question. Jodi's family, quite expectedly, were outraged by the fact that for years, Justin had been committing crimes against women while the police ignored the complaints, thus allowing the criminal to remain at large. Determined to take the situation into their own hands, they engaged in a vigorous campaign to change the way law enforcement investigated harassment cases. Their efforts were successful. In 2009, a year after Jodi's death, a stricter anti-harassment law was passed and named in her honor, a significant step in combating police inaction.